Yo, what is shakin' bacon? We're here with the very last book club for Devin Olson's Tactical Fly Fishing. Again, if you have not purchased this book yet, these book clubs are by no means everything that's in the book. There's so much more valuable information in this book. I'll leave the book down in the description. Purchase it. A little late Christmas gift. Buy yourself this book. Something to read. As the winter rolls in. Last few days here in Western New York have been stormy, tons of snow. Car is snowed in, iced over. So get yourself something to read, something to be fishing, even when you're not out there fishing. This book is really good. As for the next book club, I'm thinking about doing a John Griotch book. I haven't checked my comments, see if anyone's kind of picked out a book or seen something that they want to do. If you do, and there's a book that you recommend, book you want to talk about or kind of see me talk about or go through, please comment that below, and definitely take that into consideration, and definitely interested in seeing some different books. But thinking about doing a fiction, not really fiction, nonfiction, but more of a storytelling book, something from John Griotch. And often stories are sometimes the greatest lessons. So maybe we'll do something like that for the next book club. But, like I said, comment that below. If you do enjoy these book clubs, like, subscribe, all that jazz. But let's go wasting time. Let's get into this last one. So we've covered all the water types except for the Bankside lies. And it's kind of funny. One of the things he points out in the book, Devin, is the irony that when we fish from drift boats, how we often target the bank. But once we step out of the drift boats and we're waiting, how we fish the middle, and we often forget about the banks as soon as we step out of that boat. But banks can be incredible zones for catching fish for a lot of reasons. If you have any experience on the water and have found success, you've probably often found success along bankside lies or along banks. But maybe you need a friendly reminder, or maybe someone's overlooking the banks. There's that old thing, always fish before you step in the water, always make a cast. And I often shake that off and just be like, hey, I'm just going to step in, walk to where I want to go. But you can and will catch fish if you make those casts before you step in the water, because the banks are a great place for fish to lie. Excuse me. And here is why. In all layers of the stream on the bottom, you have contact with the water with one layer of substrate, that being the bottom. The substrate on the bottom slows the current, but when you add the bank, you add a second contact point our second point where the water is contacting the substrate. And so there's a second contact point, which means there's 2 points or 2 separate layers where there's friction on the water, and which cause more slowing of that water. So we talked about kind of the energy benefits, the cost benefit analysis of how much energy is the fish expending versus how much are they gaining. And so this becomes a lot less energy expensive because you have those 2 points of contact, that extra slowed current. So a fish can hold here with expending less energy than they would maybe in the center of the river. Also, food, and the way the current works in the hydraulics of the river, food is often pushed to the edges. So if we go back to that cost benefit analysis, 1, you're expending less energy. 2, there's more food because that's where all the food is being pushed for. So you have less energy, plus you're expending less energy, plus you're taking in more energy. That's a pretty win-win-win. That's the peak of the curve. That's your maximum efficiency for growth and success and survival and all that jazz. And lastly, and this is also a piece for survival and reproduction and everything successful for a fish, shelter or cover. Bankside lies are often where you find bushes. This is where you find trees, undercut banks. Great place for fish to live, great place for them to hide from birds of prey, and just a great place to lay low. But why? So why do we avoid these most often? And the big thing, and this is even something that I do, is because of the shelter, because of the logs, because of the overhanging, the bushes, we often have a fear of losing flies. Especially if you purchase those flies, I think that becomes a lot more important. I tie my own flies, but even I think from time to time, I put a lot of effort into that fly, even if it was just a couple minute tie. And you don't really have that desire to just huck it at the woods and catch a fish. Sometimes keeping that fly is more important than that fish. Although in competition, not so much. However, when just fishing for fun, maybe. Uh, and there's stuff to get around this, and a lot of this has to do with casting. Casting becomes a lot more important. But before I get into casting, the last thing I want to talk about was browns versus rainbows. Something talked about earlier in the book. When you have streams where browns and rainbows coexist, your bankside lies are primarily going to be where your brown trout live. That cover, that browns love that cover, that slower water. Rainbows kind of get away with some faster water, but that cover is pretty much brown trout water. And I love brown trout, so fish bankside lies for browns, especially if you're hucking streamers and you want to get, kind of a 20 to 24 inch brown. I know in one of my other videos, Kelly Gallup doesn't consider that quite as huge as most of us do, but that's a nice fish regardless. So catch them browns in that cover. But anyways, with those hazards on the bank, this is where casting becomes so much more important. And he talks about with the dry fly how typically he makes a downstream cast with an upstream reach. And this is because bankside lies, kind of like pocket water, it's tough because you have faster currents kind of on the outside, and towards the inside you have a slower current. And this is typically not the best place to throw your suspension rig, your indicator nymphing rig. This is more Euro nymphing territory, maybe a dry dropper on a Euro rig. Something where you can keep that line up off the water and kind of focus on that seam, and casting accuracy becomes more important because you want to be hitting that seam, exactly hitting that certain seam, fishing it without, the drift taking your fly and allowing your fly to get a good natural drift without those different current seams pulling your flies every which way, and you're not going to catch any fish that way. So the 3 casts he talks about, and I'm going to try to find some videos for them on YouTube. I'm not a casting expert, nor do I think I can do it justice by explaining word for word what Devin writes in the book. He has pictures in the book. I'm not going to copy those and put those in there. I don't think that's right. I'm going to try to find some videos on YouTube for you, so look for those links down below in the description. Some different casting stuff to improve your accuracy. Those 3 casts are the parallel kick cast, the helicopter cast, and the bow and arrow cast. The bow and arrow cast is probably the one that is most popular and the one that I use most often. I have been practicing with the parallel kick cast because I believe Devin has a video himself on his Tactical Fly Fisher YouTube channel, which I'll find that and leave the link for that one. And that one also works for fishing pocket water and kind of getting that sighter all in the same seam behind a rock, so it's not wonky, one's closer, one's farther. Get it all right there in that seam, and it's all good and dandy. So that's it for Bankside Lies. Chapter 11, he just goes through his proven patterns. I just want to talk about some of these flies quickly, just so I didn't omit them from the book or from this book club. I've actually fished most of these flies, and I'm a big fan of most of them. I have this front end loader caddis. He starts with dry flies, and the shuttlecock emerger pleva. The shuttlecock emerger it's a great fly. It's small, it's tiny, it's hard to see. You can throw in some pink there so you can see it a little bit better. But I've caught some really nice fish on this tiny little emerger pattern. Plus I love the pleva Euro nymph, the jig nymph that we'll talk about later. But I just love the design. It's a super easy, fast tie. Small tie, fish is good, like a midge, Baetis, just something kind of an attractor pattern too. Plus the front end loader caddis. This is a little bit more of a difficult tie in my opinion. It's going to take a little bit longer. But, I'm interested in fishing it for dry dropper and seeing how it works. There's a lot of floatable materials in this fly, so I think it's going to be a good fly for stuff like that. You got the CDC flying ant. And it's funny because actually all these dry flies I have in my box. I'm not a big dry fly fisherman, but all of these dry flies I actually have in my box. The CDC flying ant is something that I fished in the Halite Creek video on that small stream. If you checked out that video or check it out now. Really good fly. Caught a lot of fish on dries on that one. The chubby Chernobyl, this has become one of my favorites for fishing indicator rigs with a dry fly because that's competition rigs. That's just a great fly. It floats well. I'm interested in tying this with the heavier foam. He has an 1/8 inch closed cell foam that he recommends for the thing. I think I've been tying it with smaller than that. And it works well, but I have had some issues floating it. I actually have this 1/8 inch foam upstairs, so I'm interested in trying it and fishing it with that foam rather than what I have been using, uh, just to see if it works better and I don't have to add it to the body and to the exterior. And then the parachute mayfly, parachute flies, your parachute Adams, just some great flies plus floatable for dry dropper and even just fishing as a straight dry fly. Excellent pattern. He's got the waltz worm in here, quildagon, light bright paragon, all suggestive patterns, all attractor nymphs. I fish a lot of these patterns. They're just staples, especially the waltz worm. Quildagon is a little bit longer of a tie, but great fly. Fish it for quite a few years now. The light bright paragon's been a favorite. I don't fish it as much as I probably should, but it's a great pattern. We got the Egan's Frenchie, the blowtorch, soft hair cackle, the stragglestone. Now I don't tie my stragglestone like his. I tie more of a Pat's rubber leg, but that big stonefly and the hook that he recommends using that barbless hook is a great hook. The mop fly, staple, obviously. Squirmy wormy, if you haven't fished those, you need to fish the mop and the squirm. The tungsten egg taco has been, the tungsten taco egg, sorry, misspoke there. It's been a great pattern. This is how I've tied all my eggs now, and I've been fishing for steelhead. Just a great pattern. I love fishing the eggs that way. They look great. I'm interested in fishing eggs more for trout and kind of experimenting them, seeing kind of the timings there and when I can get away with fishing an egg for trout, for just regular trout versus steelhead, just to kind of add it to my normal trout box and be more effective and have that diversity when I need it. So, and lastly, he's got some streamers in here. I don't actually fish any of these streamers specifically other than the humongous, which I fish as a lake fly. I don't fish, and I fish the blank saver as a lake fly, just some basic buggers, some heavy streamers. I fish Pat Weiss's Euro streamer, which I think is in one of my other videos. Probably will do a tying video on that soon. But streamers on the Euro rig are very good. Woolly buggers, basically, just general stuff that looks like other fish. Great patterns, but great flies. I highly recommend all of them. I've really enjoyed reading this book. I hope you guys have enjoyed the book clubs. I've learned a lot along this process. I got to review my notes, go back through, make sure I'm not forgetting any of the lessons that I've learned, and just be better and test these theories out on the water. So I hope you all enjoyed these book clubs. Like I said, I think we're going to do a John Garage book either next week or the week after. I don't know if we're going to take a week off from the book club or not, but if you do have any ideas, please leave those below. So thanks for listening, guys. Enjoy your time out of the water. Stay safe out there. It's getting cold. Stay safe, tight lines, and we'll see you in the next one.